Mr. Chair, I know that you are in receipt also of the motion that the clerk is, that we tabled on Monday. And with your permission, I'd like to table that motion now, Mr. Speaker, that given the recent letter from 17 experienced Canadian addiction medicine physicians to the Minister of Addictions and Mental Health, calling on the government to cease funding of the hydromorphone for people with addictions, that the committee recognize that A, the substantial increase in opioid-related harms and deaths, B, that the government's current policies are not working, C, that the so-called safer supply strategy is a failure, making the opioid crisis worse. I'd like to move this motion, Mr. Chair, that the committee call for an immediate end to the government's so-called safe supply funding, and that the committee report this motion to the House. Mr. Chair, I've been very public and very vocal and upfront about our family's own struggles with addictions, and how I have a brother that lives on the street, that we have struggled to get him off the street. We have rescued him in the middle of the night from a bridge, from gang members that were threatening to throw him over if he didn't pay the debt. 2 years ago, he was shot twice in a drug deal gone bad with a shotgun, and it was just mere days later, after saying all the right things, that the draw and the pull of these drugs got him back onto the street with buckshot and the wounds and the tubes kind of hanging out of him. Mr. Speaker, that's how strong these drugs are, the pull of these drugs are. And to my colleagues across the way, we have to do better. It is a leading cause of death for BC youth ages 10 to 18 is overdose. There are businesses in my province that are buying illicit drugs on the black market, and they are selling them or giving them away on the street. How far have we fallen that you can perpetuate somebody's addiction, but we can't get them into a bed for recovery? If you don't believe me, if my colleagues across the way don't believe me, believe the 17 leading experts in our nation on this that write this. We are a group of experienced Canadian addiction medicine physicians who are calling on the government to ensure that all hydromorphone prescribed to people with addiction is provided in a supervised fashion, or that funding cease for this harmful practice. Calling unsupervised free government-funded hydromorphone safe supply or safer supply does not make this practice safe. It is unsafe. Hydromorphone is a potent opioid which is approximately 4 times more powerful than morphine when taken orally, and approximately 7 times more powerful than morphine when injected. Hydromorphone and other drugs are often prescribed for safe supply at 7 to 10 times the maximum recommended morphine equivalents per day, and poses serious risks to the patient and their communities from diversion. Unsupervised free government-funded hydromorphone provided to people with addiction is causing further harm to our communities by increasing the total amount of opioids on the streets and providing essentially unlimited amounts of opioids to vulnerable people with addiction. As a result of this practice, we are witnessing new patients suffering from opioid addiction and additional unnecessary overdoses and death. Mr. Speaker, I can see my colleague from the Liberal side that's laughing while I'm struggling to read this letter. I'm struggling. Perhaps Mr. Fisher doesn't have people that have been inflicted with addiction, that perhaps he hasn't sat with parents of those that have passed away due to overdose. I'll continue. The final quote of this letter is this: "Safe supply is a nice marketing slogan. The reality is, it's not safe. It is harmful to give people addicted to opioids almost unlimited access to free opioids. It is harmful to our communities for inexpensive pharmaceutical-grade opioids to be flooding our streets. We call on the government to ensure that all hydromorphone prescribed to people with opioid addiction is provided in a supervised fashion, or that funding be ceased altogether for the current harmful practice. Stop diverted hydromorphone from creating more children with addiction in our junior high and high schools." Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I read this in, and it's obviously something that is we are gripped in an opioid crisis in our country. I sit with so many families that asks us to do something. I don't have the answers, but I don't believe that we should be funding this money. Taxpayers' dollars should be going to fund these drugs. We should be doing everything in our power to make sure that we can get somebody into a bed for recovery. Recovery is always possible. Perpetuating somebody's addiction, in British Columbia, I believe it's 18 to 24 months. That's what one mother came to me. She said, "Why? Why is it that my son can get drugs, but I can't get him into treatment? If I was wealthy or rich, they could do that. But these people, a lot of these people come from families that can't afford treatment. So 18 to 24 months. If her son is still alive, and we know what they're doing is they're taking these drugs and they're selling them so that they can purchase, and oftentimes they're taking them and they're selling them to students so that they can take these drugs, or they can purchase the higher doses of fentanyl. We've got to do something. I apologize to our the witnesses. But after reading that letter, I had to say what I said. I've stood in the House so many times and talked about this. And this government and my provincial government, we as leaders are failing Canadians when it comes to this. And we have to be better. I'll cede the floor to whoever's next. Thanks.